Welcome back to In the House with Beth and Ryan. I'm Beth and this is Ryan.
Today we are going to do something that we haven't done before, which is look at trends over time. And with all of the recent news headlines and external factors that may be influencing the local real estate market, we thought it reminded us a little bit of COVID days and early COVID days, which is now surprisingly 5 years ago. And we wanted to take a look at what has happened over time in the Guelph real estate market by neighborhood and what areas may have seen the largest gains over time or largest appreciation versus neighborhoods that didn't.
And it's important, I think, to note that we are doing this 5-year span too, because we saw a huge increase in values when the market was just booming during COVID. And now we've kind of restabilized. So we're kind of going back to before things really took off. And then looking past that big hump to the current market again.
Yeah, which is more of a realistic view of the way a market should be.
Yes.
It's important to note that all of the neighborhoods in Guelph did see appreciation over time, but for a variety of reasons. Some of them were related to new builds, some of them were related to neighborhood-specific factors, but overall, there was appreciation in all areas. Do you want to go through them?
Sure.
Okay.
So why don't we start with the highs, the neighborhoods that have seen the greatest appreciation. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at all types of properties, freehold, condos, detached homes, everything. And the average sale price and how it changed from 2020 to 2025 on average. So the number one neighborhood that saw the most appreciation was the Village by the Arboretum.
Right. And so early in COVID, one of the things that started to happen were that people were moving from the GTA into Guelph. And I mean, we're speculating, or generalizing, but a lot of people moved from condos. If you remember then, people were often inside and they wanted to get out and they thought, maybe I don't want to be in a condo downtown Toronto. I'd like to be maybe closer to my family, maybe have a bit of a yard.
And for people who aren't familiar, Village by the Arboretum is a 55 plus community in Guelph. So we think, like Ryan was saying, what drove that in large part was people who had maybe already downsized in Toronto or were thinking about downsizing, and they were either in a condominium and didn't want to maybe be there anymore, or they didn't want to downsize into a condominium. And so Village by the Arboretum offers an alternative to that, where you have a lot of the maintenance and things like that are covered. So a lot of downsizers don't want to be responsible for that, but you still had the opportunity to maybe be in a detached house and have some green space.
And it was it's a great option for many people, and still today, 5 years later, this neighborhood this development is very popular. And sometimes you go through phases where there are a bunch of units for sale, but oftentimes there are very few for sale. And for the 55 plus community, they love it. It's a great neighborhood. The second biggest increase we saw was surprisingly, in the General Hospital neighborhood. And the General Hospital neighborhood is on the, what would it be, on the north side? No, it would be on the east side of the river, going all the way from, it would be Arthur Street to, I guess, Victoria.
It's almost if you put the hospital in the middle and did a big circle around it.
That's really what it is. And so this was a bit surprising for us. So we looked into the numbers a little bit to try to figure out maybe what was going on. And what we came to was that this neighborhood has a wide variety of homes, some of them century homes, some of them post-war bungalows. And there were a lot of them that sold in 2020. In around the $600,000 to $800,000 mark. And there were 38 actually in 2020. And as time moved on, there were less and less sales in this neighborhood until you get to 2024, when there's actually only 19, half the volume. And what has started to happen is there are less people moving, which means that it makes the neighborhood more desirable because rarely do things come up. But there's also been some redevelopment too.
There was a little bit of infill. So someone tears down a house and builds a more expensive potentially house in the same spot.
So it's not really gentrification, it's more so just infills of existing homes and a lack of people moving. So it's a popular neighborhood. I love that neighborhood, and it is an area where if you live in this neighborhood, you probably aren't going anywhere else.
Right.
It's a great spot to be.
Right.
And then number 3 was Courtright East.
Yep.
And you know
Yeah,
that one.
Courtright East is a neighborhood that is east of Gordon Street and I guess south of Stone Road,
Yep.
all the way up to, what would be the other boundary?
Probably up
Courtright?
up until Courtright.
And this is a neighborhood that's made up largely of larger detached homes on generous sized lots. It's fairly mature now, so big, beautiful trees. And what really drove the growth in this area was people moving from the GTA in large part, partly because it's easily commutable. You're not too far from the 401. You're on the east end of Guelph and east and south. So we think that's really what drove sales in that area.
Yeah, and also we'll talk about it in a second, but there was a lack of new development because it's a mature neighborhood that has defined boundaries. There's not a lot of new things coming into the neighborhood which could affect prices. So the overall pricing that you would see in 2020 or the available options in 2020 based on the boundaries are the same as the homes that would be available 5 years later.
Right.
And so there wasn't a lot of movement on prices just because there wasn't any new development.
Now we should look at which neighborhoods didn't see such a large increase in value.
Yeah, and so for a variety of reasons, some neighborhoods don't grow as fast, and for some good reasons too. As the city grows, the options grow, and the development grows. And the neighborhood that had the second and third, I guess, slowest growth were areas that you would probably expect would be slow and steady, which are Exhibition Park and St. George's Park. And these neighborhoods are just around the downtown. For the same reason as General Hospital, there's not a lot of new development here. There are some infill projects, but there's not a lot of factors that could sway the price in one way or another.
Yeah, very slow and steady. Very slow and steady.
And these ones, significant growth anyways, 21% growth, but they lag the city average, which was about 25%. The second slowest was the Ward. And and
that's largely probably due to densification. So we have a lot of condominium development in that neighborhood. The metalworks continues to expand, and then we have things like conversion projects like the Alice Block. And some of those units are offered at lower price points. But it's great because it's offering more accessible housing,
more affordable housing
for everybody.
And so when that happens, obviously, if you have 100 units suddenly that appear, in the Alice Block at 400 or 500,000, it brings down the total average, but for good reason, because it's adding more reasonably priced homes into the neighborhood. And then lastly, the neighborhood that saw the slowest growth over a 5-year period is, surprisingly to us, was Clarefields, or the Clare and Gordon sort of area of Guelph. And that one was surprising because it is the most popular, I think, for people that are commuting.
Right.
Anybody that is coming from Brampton or Mississauga or Milton that has moved to Guelph loves that neighborhood because it's not too far away from those areas, but still offers access to the 401.
And in large part, it's a similar story there to what's happening in the Ward, which is that we're seeing more development of condominiums, stacked townhouses, that type of development, partly to help house our student population. A lot of students are pushing much further south now. And that's really what impacted prices in that area. Yeah,
and so that neighborhood has a great mix of detached homes that you can find above $1 million. It has stacked townhomes, condos, all sorts of, it has everything. And as a result, it has brought down the average price as some of these more affordable options come into play, but it's great for people who don't have $1 million or don't want to live in a detached house. They have options. So if you have any questions on the Guelph real estate market that we haven't answered, feel free to visit us on our website at bethandryan.ca, and we'll talk to you soon.